Hey everyone, Oxleymations here again. Just wanted to make a little bit of a bonus thing here at the end of the 1988 Ninja Turtles initial 10 figures video. A couple of other things that were released that year that were not action figure related, but they kind of were three different sets of what's referred to as gags, jokes, and crazy weapons. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the full sets, but by some stroke of luck, I've managed to get my hands on one piece from all three sets. I don't know how I did it, but through just all the stuff I've bought over the years and all the stuff I've been buying in the last couple of years because, well, the internet makes that easy, quote unquote. I have from the first set
the sewer lid shield.
I believe this is from that set because it's a lighter plastic than the other ones that I have that go with like my Bebop and Rocksteady. That would be this gray thing over here. Trying to get it in close. There you go. Then from the second set, I have this trash can lid shield. Probably pretty hard to tell in this lighting. It probably looks like just an ordinary dark gray one, but trust me, that is much lighter gray than this. I got the box light from the third one. And the only reason why I'm throwing this in as a little bonus in an episode is the pure fact that I don't have the full sets, so I can't go like, okay, so also released in 1988 was this set, and this set, because that's all I got.
And now for your regularly scheduled Oxleymations brand stupidity.
Greetings, Internet, and welcome back for another episode of Putting Shells on Shelves, that show where I talk about my Ninja Turtles action figures and potentially other toy lines along the way. So far, we've covered the origins of my collection, the first wave of action figures, and whatever that thing was with the jokes and gags and what have you. So today, we're on to wave 2. Yes, that's right, the second ever set of Ninja Turtles action figures ever released to store shelves during the 1980s. It took me a moment because I was trying to remember, are these the 89 Turtles or are these the 90 Turtles? But these are the 1989 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, collecting this particular series, this particular wave, I should say, can get a little interesting, I'll say. Because this was the start of when they started putting in variant figures. You know, playthings, figures in the line that had just something slightly different about them that would make them more sought after. Like with the original wave of figures having the rubber heads and the hard heads, that was not intentional. They were not like, to my knowledge, the people at Playmates were not just automatically like, yeah, in like 30 years people are going to be wanting this rubber-headed one more than this hard-headed one. And, you know, they did not plan this stuff ahead at the start of the start of all this. It wasn't until 1989 when they started putting out the more expanded universe of figures that we got into the silly stuff like I'm about to discuss, like we are discussing now. I need to shut up and talk about this. So, with the second wave, there were, what am I doing with my hands? 10 figures total. There was Casey Jones, Metalhead, Ace Duck, Baxter Stockman, Leatherhead, Usagi Yojimbo, or if you saw the commercials, Usagi Yojimbo.
Usagi Yojimbo.
Genghis Frog, Rat King, General Trag, and I think I already mentioned Krang, but I'll just say it again anyway, Krang. But also released in that wave were General Trag, Leatherhead, Usagi Yojimbo, Metalhead, Casey Jones, Rat King, Ace Duck, I don't know why his name slipped my mind after I just flippin' said it, Baxter Stockman, and Genghis Frog. So the reason why I mention them twice is because, like I already stated, they made variants of these figures. Now, there are some people who debate that it's not actually they intended to make variants to make people want to buy, more of the same figure and, bring in more money for Playmates toys, and that it's just, certain factories didn't have the right paint for all the different figures or didn't have the right tools to process the stickers the same way. But that line of thinking kind of falls short when there are literally, to my knowledge, 2 figures that were released with variant accessories that were molded in different colors of plastic. So without further ado, let's get into this. So I'm going to start off... Well, actually, no, I'm just going to plow right into this. I'm going to grab a figure, and then I'm going to grab another figure, and I'm going to show you what's different about them and the reason why I have 2 of each of these figures. Ready, steady, go! We're going to go with, off the top of my head, we're going with Casey Jones. Now, this one is really kind of silly and stupid in my opinion, but it's a variant, and because I'm one of those weird guys who's like, I would like to have every different variant of all the different figures because it's easier to find multiples of these cheaper figures than it is to, say, put my money down on a harder to find figure released later on in the series. But I'll give you a minute. Can you spot the difference between these 2 Casey Jones figures? Alright, time's up. It might be hard to tell because of my lighting. Anyway, the pants on these Casey Jones figures. On one of them, the pant legs are more of a purpley color. On the other one, the pant legs are just a normal gray. And looking them over real quick myself, it is this one who has the darker purple, and this one who has the more gray coloration on his pants. Moving on, just going to say this. He just about dropped his golf club. Anyway, the accessories on these guys are exactly the same. The other thing I forgot to mention is the hockey masks themselves. That might be a little easier for y'all to see. Let me double check these. This one in my right hand over here has a darker gray face mask than his counterpart on the left over here. Stage left, stage right. Darker gray, lighter gray. Anyway, A-okay. Then we'll move on to Metalhead. Why not? So with these ones, now this one I have not actually confirmed that this is an actual variant. This is just what I've seen because I've had multiples of these Metalhead figures over the years. And this is just something I've noticed. Give you all a moment to see if you can figure it out. Have them like right next to each other. Okay, the difference between these 2 is the paint. If you look at the paint on this guy, see how his knees are a nice dark yellow, whereas this guy, his knees are more of a light yellow. Now, like I said, I haven't confirmed that that is in fact a variant, because that's another silly thing about collecting action figures. There are people who debate whether something like this would be considered a factory error, whether it's actually a legit variant. Sometimes the collecting hobby can be silly. But anyway, that's Metalhead. And now, just so y'all know, I'm starting this off going with the variants of what's different between each figure, and then I'm going to take away half of these figures and we're just going to quickly talk about each figure individually. I just wanted to discuss the variants because it's fascinating to me. I know, I'm weird, whatever. Alright, okay, so next, because I already had one in hand, let's talk about Baxter Stockman. Now, this one is very obvious, or at least it should be very obvious, what's different between these 2, and that's the fly swatters. If you notice, this one's got a blue plastic swatter, this one's got like a more brown, almost rusty red, and then the handle is blue, whereas this one is the exact opposite. Oop. Sorry, I bumped his arm and it made a crick sound, so I get worried because with these toys, over the years, that plastic starts to get kind of brittle, and there are a lot of Baxter Stockmans out there who are missing wings and arms because, like, they just broke off. It sucks, but that's what happens. These toys, well, these exact toys in front of me are as old as I am, give or take, and plastic over, let's see, 89, 99, 2009, 2019, over the last 33 years. I'm getting old. Plastic over the last 33 years tends to get brittle and it starts breaking down, and that's why a lot of people prefer to collect this stuff sealed in the box, mint in card, or mint on card, mint in the box, because that way it's never been handled by human hands outside of the factory when it was initially released back when it was produced. Then, of course, it's a lot easier to find one of those with all the original accessories than to find one loose with all the accessories, unless you just get really lucky, or you've got the money to spend to get all the accessories and, you know, put the figures together yourself. Alright, next we're just going to jump onto another one. I'm just going to speed up on this because I feel I'm starting to drag a bit. It's already almost 12 minutes into the video, depending on when I started chopping this down, so ready, steady, go. Okay, Leatherhead. This one is very simple and very silly. See his blue knee pad over here? Haha, this one has a gray knee pad. There you go. Variant that is literally the only thing different between these two, aside from maybe the color of the pants being a shade off. But there you go. The knee pads are different colors. Okay, and okay, now this one is definitely another interesting one, to me at the very least. We have what's referred to in the collecting community as hats on a stuck and hats off a stuck. Now, the reason why they're referred to as hats on and hats off is because one version of these guys, when they were still, you know, carded, when they were fresh from the factory at the store, the hat was not, whoop, he dropped his gun, was not actually on the top of the figure's head like this, but it was packaged like over here on the side in the blister card. Whereas the other figure, the hat was on the head. But the other big thing is that there are two different head molds, and actually, like, there's legitimate variants between these two figures. And the big difference between the head molds is, if you look at the top of this guy, his head is solid, you know, there's no indents or anything to, you know, help hold the hat on his head. Whereas this guy, just gonna, there we go, whoop, almost lost his wings. If you notice, he's got a big old indent, a big hole right there in the tip of his head, and his hat happens to have a little peg in it that pops right into that hole and keeps the hat firmly attached to the top of his head. And then there's other little silly things like the wings on one of them, I think it's this one, being made of a thinner plastic, whereas on the later issue, or whichever one this is, it's a bit of a thicker plastic. There's other silly nonsense where, like, the accessories are gummy in texture. Like, you know, they're not made of firm, hard plastic. They're nice and soft. Like I said before, sometimes collecting is silly. Yeah, that's Ace Duck, hats on. You know, it's about getting what I can afford. And I didn't realize that the time rolled over, so I'm just going to apologize right now if there was a big gap just a couple of seconds ago, and I just kind of dropped in the middle of conversation. But yeah, I'll quickly go over what I was just talking about again, just in case the part I'm about to refer to got cut off. But the only real way to tell the difference between Genghis Frog belt that's this color versus the normal color is the size of the holes where the accessories would go. Like, see how he's got these little grenades right along here? And Ace Duck here, if I had any of his, would have a bunch of like egg grenades that would go right along here. Anyway, the only way to tell the difference between the regular belt and the hard to find rare belt is literally the holes in which the grenades, accessories, what have you, go in. That's the only difference between the two. Okay, now, yes. This next one, he has a variant, but you had to get a whole other figure to get the variant. And that figure is, of course, Shredder's evil brain henchman, not henchman, cohort, buddy, whatever, from Dimension X. And this one is another one of those paint variants. I only do that with air quotes because I do. Alright, so you see how this one's got all these blue veins and everything painted on him, some nice detailing, making him look, more grotesque. There is a variant of him, which I happen to have on the shelf over here because I have the figure that you would buy to get that version of Krang, that does not happen to have any veins painted on him. It's just got the ones that were molded into the plastic. I'm, of course, referring to Krang's android body. It was a bit of a battle getting Krang into this thing in the first place, so I'm going to do my best to wiggle him back out. Come on, Krang. Come on, Krang. Krang, come on. There you go. Okay, see? No painted veins. None of that happy slappy nonsense. And then painted veins. All of that happy slappy nonsense. There you go, that's the variants for Krang. Now, I'm going to clear the tabla. And then I'm going to come back and we will do a quick little talk about each of the different figures more in depth. And there we go. Alright, so I'm just gonna pick at random. Let's go with Usagi Yojimbo. Now this figure was not created by Kevin Eastman or Peter Laird. He was made by Stan Sakai, and I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. He's one of the few figures in the entire original wave that actually has the creator's name. The creator is actually credited on the toy itself, on the butt, for lack of a better term, because I mean, literally, it's right there. But anyway, on his rear end, it actually says 1989 Stan Sakai Playmates Toys. He is the samurai rabbit, I believe.
Usagi Yojimbo, the samurai rabbit.
This guy is basically from ancient times, way back in the past. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen every episode of the original series, so I'm not exactly sure how the turtles, came to get back to the past, but I'm sure it's some shenanigans having to do with the Shredder trying to, go back in time and eradicate the turtle threat. But he's a pretty cool figure. He has the usual points of articulation of basically every Ninja Turtle figure back then. He's got the point at the neck. He's got articulation points at the shoulders, and articulation points at the elbows. Although, like most Ninja Turtle figures, the articulation between the arms is different. I almost dropped him, dagnabbit. On this arm, he kind of rotates like this. On this arm, his arm goes, can rotate like this. But there you go, he's got nice sculpting, nice detailing. I always found it kind of comical that he's got his ears up in kind of a ponytail, because, I mean, what's that really going to do? It's going to make it harder for him to hear because his ears are basically like this all the time. That's Usagi Yojimbo. He came with a bunch of swords and stuff. Unfortunately, this is the only accessory that I've been able to get through all my years of collecting, because I don't feel like going onto eBay and just buying up a huge lot of accessories. Although, considering how much accessories are going for these guys, I should have been doing that back in the day. I'm still kicking myself because I had a big like, I'm trying to think of how to describe this. I had a lot of spare accessories because I was just buying these guys not quite in bulk, but like, getting multiples, and then there would be like some sets that would have the figures, but there would be accessories for figures that weren't there, and I would already have the figure all fully accessorized, so I had extras. You get what I'm trying to say. I'm still kicking myself for selling those. I needed the money at the time, but at the same time, I now have extra spare figures that I bought for like trading and selling off that don't have any accessories, so blah. Anyway, I'm wasting time at this point. So anyway, yeah, Usagi Ajimbo is pretty cool. He's got like this scar above his eye. Yep, let me double check myself. Yeah, above this eye right here. It's basically kind of painted on. And if you're not looking closely, if you're not really paying attention to that, you'd kind of mistake it for, that's supposed to be an eyebrow and they forgot to do the other one to give him the angry eyes. Another thing that really is a tragedy with these figures is because the ears are so far back, a lot of these guys, the ears get snapped off. And so you find them with like just a top knot and no ears to speak of. It's really sad. And there's almost nothing you can do to repair that unless you happen to have the ears with you and you can super glue them back on. Next on the list, we're going to go with General Trag. Now, there's not really much to say about this. He's one of Krang's evil stone warriors from Dimension X. And he looks like he's made out of stone, several different types of stone. And he doesn't really look anything like his counterpart from the cartoon, but I'm going to assume that somehow in the comic book he looked like this. I don't know. I'm just speculating. And for whatever reason, he's got like flesh tone colored hands and a flesh tone colored face, but his toes that are poking out of his boot here are like this brown muddy color. Like I said before, the usual points of articulation, his head rotates like so, his arms at the shoulders, although they're very hindered by these like protruding spike thingies, so he can kind of move his arm up like that and then kind of move it back. He's got articulation at the elbows. And of course, like most other Ninja Turtles, like I said before, one arm can go like this on a hinge, the other one's on kind of a rotating joint, and ball and socket joints at the hips. I'm doing such a disservice to these action figures, I'm so sorry. He usually comes with 2 weapons, three weapons. He comes with a knife, he comes with this gun, and he comes with a second gun. And I've only got the 2 guns that go with one of my 2 General Trags, and I've got the 2 guns split between the 2 of them. Because let's face it would look funny if one of mine had no guns and the other one's just like, heh heh heh, say hello to my little friend. Pew, 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 pew. That kind of nonsense. Okay, so we talked about Usagi Yojimbo, and we talked about General Trag. And I gotta say, I really do like the detailing and the sculpting and the paint work on these figures. For their time period, it is fantastic. It's phenomenal. It's top-notch. Playmates Toys took that one and just knocked it clean out of the park. And since I just picked him up, let's talk about Casey Jones next. Now, Casey Jones is the vigilante and kind of anti-hero who helps out the Turtles from time to time when he's not doing his own thing. This guy is another really, really good sculpt, in my opinion. He's got like the ripped abs and a little bit of chest hair or abdominal hair going on. It's hard to tell, otherwise he's got like some really funky, like extra ripped abs. See all the little sculpted details in there? At least I hope you can see it. He's got the one shoulder pad, he comes with the golf club, and he comes with 2 baseball bats. I have both bats for him, but the other one is currently with his doppelganger over on the shelf over there. He's got great sculpting. He's got a hockey mask akin to Jason Voorhees. And yeah, he looks like he's lived a life on the streets, which obviously he has, according to the comics and the show. Although I think he's only in a couple episodes of the show. That is one bad mother. Next, we're going to jump over to Krang, because this one's an easy one. He's the evil brain from Dimension X, which sounds like an awesome 1950s sci-fi horror movie. He comes with his little bubble walker, because, well, he's a brain, and as such, all he has for a form of locomotion are his tentacles, his tendrils, whatever you want to call those. He's got his brain-sucking gun, and, yeah, there's not much to say about this figure. The figure itself has 2 points of articulation, the least of the bunch. And that's literally just you can wiggle his tentacles / tendrils up and down like that. The walker vehicle that he comes with has articulation at the legs, sort of. Like you can move these back and forth like this. But if you're trying to just stand him up for display purposes, that does literally nothing. He's got these arms right here and here that pop onto the thing, and I'm not even going to attempt to move them because the plastics shrank a bit, so it's very hard to get those to stay on. But yeah, they've got articulation at the elbow, I guess you'd call it, so they can go like this, and that's it. And of course, he's got this hose that's attached to the walker that goes up to the brain drain gun, so you can like latch it onto another figure and feed himself, I guess? I don't know how that works. I don't think it was ever actually explained either. But, oh, and if it was explained and you know, put it in the comments down below. I like to learn about this stuff, and I want to know as much as I can about the topic which I'm speaking of. And if I make any mistakes, then and you guys are able to let me know in the comment section down below, then I can apologize for it in the next video and get it right in the future. Please and thank you. Next, we have one of the 4 punk frogs, 2 of which were never released. We have Genghis Frog. Now this guy is pretty cool. He's kind of a surfer dude. He's got his little, I can never remember what those are called. Kneeboard? Okay, we'll call it a kneeboard shield right here. We've got his soda can grenades, I think. I can't remember right off the top of my head. We've got his tongue gun, which literally is a tongue inside a gun that goes like bleh. And then, he can give the bad guys a licking. Because he turned out to be one of the good guys. As did technically all 4 of the punk frogs, even though, like I said before, only 2 of them were released. And funny enough, the other of the 2 doesn't even resemble the ones from the cartoon. He's also got these sunglasses for some reason, which are very easily lost and a very hard accessory to find for this little goofball. But as you can see, I got lucky and I was able to track them down. This guy was complete, aside from those silly sunglasses, until I happened upon them in a comic shop. They had a big dig bin full of stuff, and I just dug down to the bottom, and there were Ninja Turtle accessories, and boom, there they were. And they were very cheap, too. Usual articulation. You can turn his hand like this. You can turn his other hand in much the same way. His head can move a little bit. And of course, ball and socket joints at the hips, which I'm hesitant to move to rotate because, like I said a few minutes ago, these things are about 33 years old, and unfortunately, the plastic does not hold up like one would hope it would. Then we have Ace Duck. I decided to go with the hats on variant, so I'm not, so his hat's not falling off constantly and I don't have to keep picking it up. He's the most anthropomorphic of all these characters from this line. I guess... okay, no, he's not the most. I don't know how to word this. He's one of the best looking of these guys. There, I put it together somehow. He comes with a pair of wings that plug into his back. They open up thusly so that you can have him like flying over the bad guys and dropping egg grenades if you have them. He's got his military issue pistol, which mine happens to be very chewed up because the kid who owned this back in the day thought it was a teething toy, apparently. But that slides actually fairly well, and he's able to hold his accessory very nicely in his hand. Like, just tapping on it's not going to fall out of his hand. He also comes with the belt that's supposed to house his egg grenades. And as I was saying before about the variants, I did in fact go back and check. Both Ace Ducks have their appropriate belts. These aren't Genghis Frog yellow belts, or tan. That's the color everyone's going with. These aren't Ace Duck. These are not Genghis Frog tan belts. They are in fact just plain old Ace Duck belts. Now this guy has actually got a little bit of special articulation going on. He's got like the same ball and socket kind of joint that his legs would have, only it's got like a rivet. I don't know how well y'all will be able to see that. Yeah, he's got like rivets in his shoulders that allow him to actually raise his arms up like this, and because it's on kind of a ball and socket joint, you can actually get some decent poses out of this guy. And of course, his hands swivel at the wrist, at least that one does. Let me double check the other one. Yep. Both hands swivel at the wrist. Head swivels at the neck. I'm always disconcerted when I hear cracks like that moving these things around. And his legs are loose enough, at least they were. I'm not going to attempt that again. Ball and socket joints for the legs. Also, the paint detailing on him is minimal, but it is actually very well done. Because you got all those feathers on his chest, you got his shoulder emblems, you got his pants, his nice blue pants, and yeah, we'll call it a wrap with him. Then we have Leatherhead, who is absolutely one of my favorite Ninja Turtle characters ever, because I mean, he's literally just an anthropomorphic alligator. This is literally an alligator who is able to get up off the floor from doing one of those perpetual push-ups that people keep saying that they look like they're stuck doing. Well, kind of. He can stand up like that. But in the actual cartoon, he's actually able to like get up and stand up. He's like all beefy and stuff, and he's ready to, you know, kick shell and take out the turtles. Comes with his, I believe it's called his Mumbo Gumbo belt. He also came with a shotgun, which is actually very ornately carved. Something that's just like built into the sculpt, but it's still pretty cool. He's got himself a little Bowie knife going on. Bowie knife, whatever the word is for that knife right there. And one of the other things he comes with is a bear trap. Just give me 1 second. I left it on the shelf over there, which is thankfully just within arm's reach for me, because I have arms for days. But he also comes with a little bear trap like that actually kind of works. Although it's not spring-loaded, so if the turtle steps in it, you have to go like and flip it over so that it goes and, you know, does its thing and traps them. The sculpting is fantastic. As I was saying before, you can see all the sculpted detail of all the scales and stuff on this reptile. The sculpting inside the mouth, you can't really see too well because his accessory is blocking his head. There we go. Kinda, sorta, hopefully. See how it's all nice and pink on the inside? If I really wanted to give y'all an in-depth look on the inside of his mouth, the head can in fact, or the top of the head that's articulated can in fact be popped off, but I don't want to do that and risk breaking him. The paint detailing is fantastic, in my opinion. Check out all those pearly white chompers. And he's got the red and yellow eyes going on of a predator. Yeah, he's just an overall cool figure. Really like him. Moving on. Let's see, we've done Usagi Yojimbo, General Trag, Casey Jones, Metalhead, Ace Duck, Genghis Frog, Krang, Leatherhead, and his trap, Rat King. Let's move on to Rat King. Now, Rat King is another character who actually played, I think, somewhat of a significant role in the original series. And he's basically just kind of a sewer dweller. You know, he's a street urchin, if you will, who decided to take up living in the sewers along with New York City's rats. And he has become their king. He controls them somehow. It's not explained in the original series, but in the 2012 series, it's shown that he was originally some kind of a scientist who was working on experiments, basically on mind control, but the only creatures he could control were rats. And then there was a whole thing that played into him starting to be able to mess with Master Splinter because, he's literally a giant rat. It was a pretty cool storyline, albeit I'm not a big fan of the whole mind control aspect, but that's a story for another day. He comes with a crossbow with a rat on it. I don't know why the rat decided that it was going to be used as ammunition, but he's got a cool little mohawk. He's got that going for him. He's also got this rat grappling hook, and these rats are green for some reason because they decided not to paint them. He's got the rat on his shoulder. He's got a rat sculpted into his back area right there. He's got all these bugs and spiders and stuff crawling all over him, and just it looks like his hair cutter uses a lawnmower. And of course, he just looks insane. Look at that face. He's got his pupils are pointing in different directions, and he's got like the kind of face going on, almost like a Frankenstein thing. And then he's got like a centipede right there. And would you look at that? All I did was I was holding him up, moving him around, and his belt fell off. Okay, we can get a better look at his sculpting that way. For some reason, his legs are wrapped up like a mummy, like all these bits and strips of cloth. Technically, so is his upper half, but it looks more like he's sewed together a bunch of pieces of fabric for that. It would make a bit more sense if they would have painted the wraps and stuff around his middle and down his legs instead of just painting them to his torso and then stopping. Now, this guy has got less points of articulation than the usual figures, because most of these guys you can like rotate their arms and it can move up and down, but he doesn't have that luxury. His arms are articulated at the shoulder, and that is it. Although he does have one thing the others don't. He can articulate at the waist. Look at that. So he traded in wrist articulation for articulation at the waist. Not quite an even trade, but it works for him. They keep dropping their accessories, and I keep freaking out. Because I had another figure that we're going to talk about in a later video coming up, that I dropped his accessory, and it snapped when it hit the ground. You'll hear about that story when we get to it. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly try and get his belt back on him, and then we will move on to the next one. There. His belt is back on firmly. Now then. And there goes his crossbow again. Alright, so we talked about Usagi Yojimbo, General Trag, Casey Jones, Metalhead, Ace Duck, Genghis Frog, Leatherhead, Krang, and Rat King. And I don't think we talked about this guy yet, so I'm just going to go for it. And if I already talked about it, I'm sorry. I might just chop this down or whatever. But then we have Baxter Stockman. Now this is one bad bug. He's got like human hands, which are what's left of his humanity from before he got transformed. Well, human arms, I should say, are what's left of his human side. Well, and the hair. He also comes with his turtle eradicating fly swatter, as evidenced by the poor squished baby turtle right there on the top. He basically looks like Jeff Goldblum's The Fly, and that is a horrible thought. If you've ever seen the body horror that is The Fly, 1980, myself put the year in here, 1980, that's some messed up stuff. But he actually looks pretty cool like that. The one thing that annoys me and has annoyed a lot of other collectors, it's not really a big pet peeve of mine, not really a big gripe of mine, is that they never made a normal Baxter Stockman. This was the only one we got back in the 80s. Which is why I initially picked up this figure from the Burger King Kids Club, because I was planning on doing a custom and making him, painting him up so he would be like the human Baxter Stockman. But then I started picking up some of the other figures from that Burger King line, and I was like, I'll just leave him as is. Although if I get another one, he's custom fodder. He has these wings that detach from his back, so you got Baxter like this. Then if you want him to fly, You just, snap these on, and with the power of your imagination, I'll get you, turtles. But his accessory here is actually articulated. I'm going to be very gentle with this thing. Like I said before, this plastic unfortunately doesn't hold up, but it's articulated here at the biceps for some reason. And of course, the wings themselves rotate on little pegs, like so. I should probably show you his back where that attaches. You got like this nice little indent right there, and probably it's going to be almost impossible to see, but inside here there's a little tiny indentation where you can plug in that little nub right there to make these stick into his back a little more firmly. Oh god, don't drop it. Don't drop it. There we go. And he's got like this weird hunched thing going on, and he's got like this weird little fly butt where it's like poking out like that. And the paint applications are really good on this thing. The sculpted detailing is fantastic, although there's some spots regarding the paint where it looks like they should have gone all the way, but they only like painted the front half of his torso right there, and they left the back blank. Did the same thing on this side, although it's a little harder to tell because it kind of almost blends in with the syringe in his pocket right there. See the syringe in his pocket and the gray up here by my fingertip? But yeah, he's got the same standard articulation as most of the rest of these. Head, arms go up at the shoulder. His joints are very tight for a toy his age. And wrist articulation like that. And this arm has the exact same thing. It doesn't have like elbow or swivel or anything like that. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If there's any figure in this wave or in the 1988 wave that you want me to take a look at, or any of the preceding waves that you want me to do like an in-depth video on, please, for the love of all that's nice in the world, put that down in the comments. Let me know which figures you want to see more of. I want feedback. I would love to have feedback. I want to hear from you people. So with that said, ladies, gentlemen, and all other configurations of being, if you like what you've seen here today, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon to be notified of future uploads once you are subscribed. Feel free to share this with your friends if you think they'll like it, and even if you don't, well, share it with them anyway. You might be surprised. And with that out of the way, everyone, this is your old buddy Oxleymations saying, Cowabunga, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Later. Greetings, Oxleymations. Hi, May. Greetings, Internet, and welcome back to another Oxleymations presentation. Why am I wiggling my head like this? I'm sure it's some I cannot talk right now. I'm sure it's some shenanigans.